Or
And we are live. Welcome to another episode of Unscripted, and I have the great pleasure to introduce Corey White, who is currently on West Coast or the right coast. Thank you very much for joining me early this morning. How are you, Corey?
I'm fantastic. How are you doing? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks very much for. I know you're super busy, and appreciate you taking the time. So, the audience, I have a vast audience that listens to the podcast, and a lot of times they are very curious about the journey that people took to become senior executives, running your companies and so on. If you don't mind, just to tiptoe into the conversation, just walk me through some memory lane, how you got started and how you became an executive.
Yeah. I love telling this story, and I'll be brief as well. I've been in the industry for 28 years. Okay. Believe it or not, I first got in, my first job was August 24th, 1995, working for Microsoft. The day Windows 95 came out, I was supporting Windows 95. So I was at South by Southwest. I was speaking last year there, and I was meeting all these Web3 people on Web3. And I was like, I was here when Web 1 started. Okay. I know what Web 1 was like. And so that's my start. And I realized really quickly after getting bored working for Microsoft, because the answer was reinstall or reboot for Windows 95 for most of the issues in a support position. So I figured I got to get into consulting, right? And so I got into consulting because it was different. And I got to do some really cool projects. I was one of the ones that put in the Intuit TurboTax network so that we could do online tax returns back in 1997 for the first time ever. And then I slowly started getting into cybersecurity, because when you build the internet for a lot of large companies, then the next thing you know, you got to put in a firewall. So I put in firewalls, and I started doing penetration testing. I started doing assessments, and they just snowballed from there. Then I joined the team at Foundstone in 2004 here in Southern California. Got to meet a bunch of industry veterans, and then just really grew from there. I ran the incident response team. I did the implementation. We got acquired by McAfee. And then I continued doing that for about 8.5 years there. Okay. Then I was one of the founding executives at a company called Cylance. And we did that for 6.5. Made it into a unicorn, brought artificial intelligence to cybersecurity. I ran the services arm. And later I was a chief customer experience officer, running about half the organization once we got acquired. And so then 2019, started Cyvatar.
Unbelievable journey, if you don't mind, Corey. Like you condensed the whole thing into unbelievable. But if you don't mind, let me just unravel some of the stuff, because it's so fascinating. When you have a lot of firsts, right? Like you mentioned, you were just starting out. At the time, did you feel it was impactful, or was this always the hindsight is 2020 after the fact that you were like part of such amazing milestones in the industry? Tell me how would that feel, because at the time were you just glancing over it was nothing, and then coming back you realize it was a really impactful time?
At the time it felt impactful, but you're continually learning every single day. Now I'll frame this up. Now think about this. I was doing some of the largest incidents in the world, and probably from 2006 until 2012. And then I had these non-technical executives that would come to me, and board members, and we're in the middle of chaos. They're like, Corey, now we've done the penetration testing with you. You've done our yearly pen test. Okay. Like, cool. Yeah, we did that. And they said, we bought all the products in the suite. Why the hell am I paying you $400 an hour to do incident response? And why did we get hacked if we did all these other things? Now, so the penetration test just tells you what's wrong at a point in time. Okay. Now, if you didn't go and fix everything that was wrong and then continually fix it, then yeah, you can get compromised. Now, the products that we've implemented, they're mostly detect and respond, meaning it's after the fact. And so my incident response team will come in, figure out how the hackers got in, and use those products to go clean you up. And so they were just bewildered. This doesn't make any sense. So that's when I started getting the inkling that the cybersecurity industry, number one, isn't that mature, and I think we all agree on that. But then number two, the whole model, how we're approaching it, it's broken. We're just doing it wrong because we're not solving the problem.
Yeah, and I would love to double click on that as well. And it seems to me that a lot of the problems that were starting to emerge in 1995 are still around today, despite the fact that you mentioned we have tons of product, tons of vendors out there. But fundamentally, as you mentioned, we're not solving the problem at its core. We're very reactive as industry. So talk to me a bit about that. When did you realize that it's always a reactive after the fact approach? And was it because you had to explain that to executives? And sometimes when you explain something, it reveals itself to you as because you have to internalize it before you explain to someone else?
Yeah, I've always realized that. And I'll give you one that really hit me early days because my background is in consulting and I not only did the assessments, but also we did the implementations. So I'll never forget, this was actually a pretty major car company. I was called in to remove their checkpoint firewall and put in Pix firewall and IDS. Okay. And totally dating myself there. But anyway, so the sales guy sold the gig and gave me like a week or so to go and do that. And I looked at their design and they had created a DMZ. The DMZ was in front of the firewall. Okay. So the first thing I did is I plugged in the IDS, then like a Christmas tree. And I was like, I thought something was wrong with it. And I realized that their architecture was wrong. I was like, crap, I got to re-architect this whole perimeter network to get this right. Otherwise, I got to put in a firewall and have their web server, email server sitting outside the firewall, literally on the internet. I started to realize this is broken. You can't do this kind of plug and play model. Also, I picked up, remember IDS? So IDS, Intrusion Detection System. And then they came out with IPS. Nobody
Prevention.
implemented the prevention part of it, right? Because it was too much work. You had to go and monitor the traffic and tune it, and it was just too hard to do. And so as a result, the cybersecurity industry, we're still doing an IDS method as opposed to an IPS method, prevention method. But if you look outside of cybersecurity, like when you leave home, do you close and lock your door every single time? Or you leave it open and just monitor when somebody comes in your house? So when we look at the stats in 2021, I think 2022 is going to look exactly the same. The number of successful attacks went up 27%. The reason why? We're leaving our front door open and monitoring on that. And so when somebody comes in your house, it's pretty hard to kick somebody out of your house when they're already in. Same thing, it's pretty hard to kick somebody out of your company when they're already in. Okay. And so we're doing it wrong. If I want to secure my car, I'm not going to leave my front door wide open and get an alert when somebody jumps in the driver's seat. It's too late. So that's what's broken with the industry. And we still haven't recovered the IDS to IPS mentality of getting into a preventative state and blocking some of these attacks.
And Corey, there were so many different technologies that were the promise of be all and end all. Data loss prevention was one. There was also just misconfiguration, just to describe it, is rampant even today with the XDR, the endpoint detection, all of that. Are executives starting to feel jaded because they're trying to ride these curves of technology, but every curve, every wave of new technology is supposed to solve the problem. And then fast forward 6 to 12 months, the incident types and incident numbers ever increasing despite the major investment in people, in technology, and the processes are constantly changing on the business side.
Yeah.
We're still behind. Why is that?
Let's be clear. The cybersecurity industry is trying to stop cyber attack. Okay? Because
Corey, we have to probably do a 30-second moment of silence after that statement.
yeah, if we were, there would be no such thing as detect and respond. Okay? Here's why. Like I'm an ex-penetration tester. I'm an ex-incident responder. I know how these things work. So let's just say that you have a detect and respond strategy, and then I exploit a vulnerability. Let's take last year in June, the MSDT vulnerability, the Microsoft vulnerability. Every single Microsoft system was vulnerable. So let's say I exploit that vulnerability and I do it at 1 a.m. I get onto that system. Within an hour, I've escalated privileges, got admin access, pillaging through the network. And then you're using a detect and respond strategy. Maybe you get an alert that the exploit happened. Maybe you get an alert that I've started pillaging going through the network. By the time you come into work that next morning, it's too late. Okay. So if you're trying to stop a cyber attack, then you would, the MSDT vulnerability wasn't a patch for a while. What you could have done is turn off that service and then you're no longer vulnerable. And that's what we did for our members within 24 hours they were taken care of. So if we were trying to stop a cyber attack, the easiest way to not get hacked is don't have any critical high risk vulnerabilities. The easiest way to, and you look at the Verizon data breach report, every single year they come out with the same stuff. The number one way the companies get compromised is not having MFA and usernames and passwords. So
almost basic stuff.
basic stuff. So yeah, so we're failing at the basics. Last thing I'll say is Bruce Snyder, I think it was 2001. Security is not a product. It is a process. So you go back to old school, you just said it, people, process, and technology. So we've got all the technology. Nobody needs to make another vulnerability scanner, another patch management tool. All those things exist. We're failing on the people in the process. And so that's why it's so broken.
But Corey, automation and orchestration was supposed to everything. Don't you remember? Didn't you have that?
Have you tried it? It's complicated. I've actually tried it. I'm like, wow, okay. I love the concept of SOAR, but you've got to really know your stuff to do that. So it's not easy. And so the reason why it's so broken is I was reading a stat that if 99% of the businesses are small to medium-sized businesses, okay, 3 times as likely to get. We have a shortage of cybersecurity talent. And what's happening with talent, because of the 6,000 cybersecurity companies, all the talent is going working for those companies and getting stock options. These small and medium-sized companies, they aren't getting the talent. And so there's nobody to work there and nobody to implement these solutions. So when I say the people in process is broken, then yeah, it's broken because there's no one to implement it. So if a small, medium-sized company hires a CISO that costs, I don't know, $100K a year, they still got to implement it. Again, broken.
But again, automation, AI, we're supposed to have micro segmentation. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Application whitelisting.
I got a couple stories right there. So I had the very large mine back in the day, I'm going to say that is 2010. They had 3 to 4 people every single day going through and building a whitelist for a major whitelist product that no longer is out. But whitelisting doesn't work. If I got to hire 3 people to build a whitelist and maintain a whitelist, come on. And then you take AI, for example. I worked at, I was one of the executives and founding executives at Cylance. And what I found out is that you have an amazing solution like Cylance, what it was back in the day. We saw all kinds of malware. But then I had a good friend of mine, a CISO, executive, smart guy, he called me up. He's Corey, I love you, man, but you guys are blocking WinWord.exe. I had to go into the system and allow that. And I was like, okay. So I look at it, I log in. I was like, it's actually in the System32 directory. Yeah, it's called WinWord.exe, but WinWord.exe is in Program Files Microsoft, right? It's not in System32. I had my team reverse engineer it. It was a keylogger that he had just allowed to run in his environment. And so the expectation that we think that just because you create some amazing AI tool, you don't have the people in the process to be able to implement and maintain it. So we haven't called to our technology yet.
Yeah, and it's incredible. Even simple stuff, anti-phishing or anti-spam, essentially blocking malicious content to go through email, which is so basic. It's the basic. Again, a lot of organizations get infiltrated that way. And it's still, how long has email has been around? How long anti-spam has been around? We still haven't solved even that particular problem. And then what we're now trying to do, we're trying to teach the employees on the awareness side. But no one is that sophisticated to be able to recognize what's wrong and what's not. How come we haven't even fixed a basic issue of like email hygiene, which is almost the fundamental for every business? Those are the pillars of business, the email back and forth, and we haven't even fixed it.
You think about it like this way, and this again ties back to me having my pen testing and hacking background. Let's break down really quickly what happens in a ransomware attack, okay? And how it actually happens, and then tie into email. I had one of our customers, they actually had a ransomware incident that did not execute because we blocked it at the endpoint. Now, here's the deal. What happened when I looked at it to go, and I'll call this pre-forensics, right? Because it didn't actually, the incident didn't happen, but how did they even get that far? So they didn't have email security blocking a phishing email to come in. Okay. So the phishing email came in. You can never trust the user, even if you do security awareness training. I think you absolutely need to do that 100%. But you got employees, you only need 1 to click, right? That's it. So the phishing came in. Okay. They clicked on it. Now, if the phishing did come in, if you actually had email filtering to block that phishing from coming in, then the phishing doesn't even come in. Nothing percent. I've seen it. The technology for these hackers has gotten even better. They can bypass the most intelligent filters. When it comes in, then you click on it. But when you're clicking on it, if you have DNS or browser security, then it's going to block it going to that malicious compromised site. Okay. So that's the second way you could block it. Then the third way you block it, let's just say if you click on it and it tries to download the malware and execute. If you have an endpoint in blocking, not detect and respond, then it won't execute. So we went through security awareness training, went through email security for phishing, we went through DNS browser security, and then we finished with endpoint security. That's multiple layers of security. So that's how you stop a phishing attack. Do we have that implemented everywhere? No, but that's how you stop it. And ultimately that could have been a ransomware attack that will prevent it.
In being an entrepreneur, best, most successful stories of people that build something, build companies, is where they came across a gap in the industry somewhere in their past life. And then they decide, okay, I need to, because I can't get off the shelf software, or I can't get the off the shelf solution, I'm going to go ahead and build that, which, by the way, it takes a lot of tenacity and courage and you name it. It's people think it's easy to build and they only see the success stories on the side, but don't see like kind of the journey. What was specifically for you the gap that you saw and decided to found yet another company?
Yeah, great question. And I'll say we've all seen the startup journey graphic where it's a squiggly line. It absolutely is that, by the way, just throwing it out there. But the gap that I saw was I realized, to the point I said earlier, the people, process, and technology. And what I did is I started looking at other business models outside of cybersecurity, because I believe the traditional have a product, a service, it just doesn't work, right? Because I've scaled a services business up to 60 million before. It's very hard to scale a services business, SOW after SOW after that. But subscriptions is much easier. So I started looking at, okay, the subscription model. And I built that at one of those at my last company. And so that's what I built here. Because here's the thing, cybersecurity isn't one-time activity, meaning I apply one patch a month or once a year penetration test. It doesn't fit with a services model. Cybersecurity is a continuous act. So the fact that there were 25,000 vulnerabilities that were released last year based on the CVE in about 68 per day or so, then it's a continuous activity. Okay. So if you're only having a one-time type of model, you're never going to match with the problem you're trying to solve. So what I realized is that cybersecurity is not a product. It is not a service. It absolutely is a continuous process. But the biggest gap in the industry is you think about outcomes. Number one, I use Netflix, for example, or I'll use Spotify, for example. I'm a big Prince fan. So if I want to listen to some Purple Rain, right, then I can press a button on my phone and hear Purple Rain. So the outcome is listening to the music, right? It's not buying a record player or a cassette tape. Any of that is actually listening to the music. Now let's talk about cybersecurity. The outcome is actually being secure. It is not buying the product. So you can buy the best whiz-bang AI product out there, but you still may not get secure if you don't actually implement it and maintain it. So what I built here in my company as an entrepreneur is, let's build a company that gets you to outcome. I don't talk the tech and mumbo jumbo and all that. And I'm like, all right, David, what are your challenges? Let's get you to these out faster than anybody else out there. And we'll remove all the barriers that you could possibly have. So that's what we built. And it's been a pretty amazing journey. We've grown the first year, we started selling 500%. And even in last year, kind of a down year, we grew 142%. So it's working out well because the niche is this for SMBs. They just want the problem solved. Last thing I'll share is, for me, I outsource everything. Our development, HR, I don't have a whole HR team, right? Our finance, we outsource everything we possibly can. Why would you not outsource cybersecurity to experts instead of trying to hire them that you can't retain anyway? That's the niche we found.
Yeah, and those. So first of all, let me just say you're not a real purist. I have the Purple Rain vinyl, and if I want to listen to it, I make an effort. I go out, turn the record player on, put it on. You got to look up the song and so on. So you got to make a real effort, which is interesting because your logo is effortless cybersecurity.
Yeah.
So you're on the flip side of that. But yeah, you're 100% correct. Companies are now outsourcing everything because they realize unless it's your core or part of your core business functionality, things that you're good at, why even bother? It just pulls you down. You have to deal
Yeah.
with. So how do you solve that for your customers specifically? You mentioned that they would just want the outcome. Walk me through a journey of signing up with Cyvatar and what does the tool actually does for them and what's the experience like?
Absolutely. So first thing we do is we have a promise that we deliver to every single one. It's a subscription, so we call it members. To every one of our members, they get 3 outcomes, period. Okay. Number one, we implement preventative controls. And I'll circle back and explain what that actually is in a second. But the one is preventative controls. Number two is cybersecurity compliance. We want to understand what are your compliance needs. Because you take an SMB, previously compliance was not a thing, or compliance could even be just security questionnaires that they're getting. They cannot do business unless they're answering these security questionnaires. And you can answer and say, oh, we have a vulnerability management program with endpoint protection, security awareness. If you haven't implemented those preventative controls, you can't answer the questions. So you got to have preventative controls first to actually get to compliance or questionnaires. Then number 3 is cybersecurity insurance. So cybersecurity insurance, you think of it, a little quick lesson of what happened there. Back in the day, it's like 2010-ish, everybody's like, oh, I'll go get insurance. I can transfer risk. And they would fill out the little questionnaire and say, yeah, we do these things, check. And then they would do it. I know a lot of cybersecurity insurance companies, and one very large one said their claim rate over time is 90 to 100%. Okay. That's not a sustainable model for an insurance company, obviously. And so the reason why that is happening is because we are not implementing preventative control. Okay. And so if eventually every company is going to get hacked, then you got to implement those preventative controls. So the 3 outcomes every one of our members gets is preventative controls, insurance, and compliance. But let me talk for a second on what I mean by preventative controls.
Yeah, and I love that. There's so much to unpack, Corey, and I'm like just sitting in my seat trying not to ask anything because you're on the roll. So go ahead.
Exactly. Let me answer. I'll answer as much as I can. Then I'm sure you'll dive in with more questions. So preventative controls, what we believe at Cyvatar is that you think about what is the lifespan of best of breed product. Let's just say it lasts 3 to 5 years. Then they get acquired and then they suck or whatever, right? And so think about the churn that a company has to do. One, they got to find the best of breed product. They got to do all the searching POCs, everything. I've been at companies where the average POC cycle has been 6 to 9 months.
And by the way, I think that window is shrinking actually, Corey, and you're 100% correct. If it was 3 to 5 years, it's now 18 months before they get acquired and get swallowed by another company.
To your point, what that means is the product is irrelevant. Okay. All you need to do is know best of breed, best of class. So what we've done is we've chosen 3 to 4 best of breed, best of class for every single solution. So think about a vulnerability scanner. You got the top 3, they're out there. We partner with all 3 of them. Okay. We choose one as our primary, but we partner with all 3 just in case what goes out of business or whatever, then we can still offer vulnerability management. You take patch management. We partner with 2 or 3 patch management companies, best of breed patch management solutions. So again, if one goes away, we're still there because we don't sell products or services. We sell solutions that are preventative controls that are tied to an outcome. So when I say an outcome, when we're talking about vulnerability management, instead of buying a scanner and then buying a patch system, you subscribe to us, and then we're going to bring in a threat and vulnerability management program with the best of breed product, with the best of breed patching. And because this had 2 cool things happened in the last 12 years or so. Number one, thing called the cloud. Okay. We don't need to go on site. Back in the day when I was doing installation work, racking and stacking, and that was painful. Not to do that anymore. Okay. So
forklift upgrades, Corey.
Yeah, exactly. So that's cool. The other thing is APIs. I love APIs because again, you don't have to worry about logging into all these different interfaces. What you can do is pull all the data via API and then manipulate it. So what we've automated is automatically scanning, patching, remediating on a continuous basis. That's how back to what I said at the beginning. If 68 new vulnerabilities come out every single day, just say 5 or 6 apply to your organization, you've got 100 employees, There's a bunch of new vulnerabilities coming out every day. So you need to have an automated way to scan, patch, remediate. Now, same thing with endpoint protection, right? You need to have it in blocking, but with going back to the IPS, IDS days, you got to do at least a few weeks of monitoring, see what normal looks like, and tweak it and tune it. And you need a team that knows how to do that. You cannot hire that off the street. You need to have a team already knows how to do that. So I have an existing team. We've done literally thousands of endpoints and gotten locked down. So that's high level of what I mean by preventative controls. But going and taking a step back, let me make sure I'm clear, asking that customer, what requirements do you have? Oh, you need SOC 2 and CMC. And we've cross-mapped every one of our solutions to every single control in there. Because you look at SOC 2, you need a vulnerability management program, you need multi-factor authentication, you need security awareness training, you need endpoint protection, IT asset management. Those are all our solutions. So we can get you compliant and secure at the same time faster than anyone else. Now, we don't do audits. We partner with audit firm and we have a relationship. We introduce you to the audit firm. It's time to get your audit. You just go quicker. So that's what the journey looks like. And then you add on the insurance that you'll get because you've implemented the preventive controls. You're good to go. So outcomes guaranteed within 90 days or less on average across our 100 and so customers today is about 60 days. All that's implemented. That's the time of your POC for one product in most cases. So that's what the journey looks like.
And it's amazing. And it's amazing because you took that layer, that product layer, which companies always struggle with, and you make it almost transparent. The customers, I guess some customers probably ask you what are you using, but most probably don't care. What do you care what the underlying product is? Because again, as you mentioned, it might be something else within 8 months.
And what I found is that you have your enterprise customers, your CISOs, they're the ones, Corey, what's the technology behind this? And they're always asking. And I'm using best of breed, best of class. So you ask, what scanner are you Tenable? Okay, what are you using for patching? What are you using for endpoint? SentinelOne. Again, best of breed, best of class. So there's no questions there. Or even go to our website. It's not a secret. All our tech is there.
And it shouldn't matter to the customers anyway.
Yeah.
I think they probably, as you mentioned, it probably resonates with them because they couldn't care less, what the name of the company is, as long as it delivers what they need to do.
Exactly. Let me give you this model again is a exponential organization, but you think Netflix cares what TV you're watching it on? They don't care, right? But you just want the outcome of watching a movie or content, right? Does Spotify care what you're playing it on? No. They just know you're playing on your phone, your car, whatever, right? Doesn't matter. So in cybersecurity, we got to stop caring about the products. As long as it's best of breed, best of class, and you can't go and because I spent 14 years at AV company, you can't go back and say, oh, I'm going to use the cheapest AV out there. And there are some out there that are really cheap, but they're still using the 1987 technology from John McAfee and crew. And so that's why it's cheap. You get what you pay for. So it's not going to block the attack that the hackers are easily bypassing. So you got to have the right tech.
And if you don't mind, I want to peel the onion on the insurance piece. You describe the transformation of insurance companies. I always say insurance companies are not .org. They're not there to service you. They're there to make profit. And there's a fundamental shift in how insurance companies are insuring the companies. And also, as you mentioned, companies have used that basically as almost like as a strategy to not fix some of the issues they had. And that is no longer the ability to do. And then now there's all kinds of rules and stipulation for you to get cyber insurance. A lot of companies would not even insure you if you don't have certain risk controls in place, like you just mentioned. For example, if they don't have MFA, or if they don't have privileged access management, all kinds of stuff, they just do not insure you. So you solve that issue as well. You know exactly what the insurance companies required because you deal with them anyway, and then you deal with the control in place. So you know exactly what it is that in order for the customer to do, in order for actually to get to be insured. And that's not trivial. It's very tough for some companies to get insured today. And the premiums are exuberant, and sometimes they're not even insured. You cannot insure it. That's what
100% the case. Let me give you a painful analogy that I think would resonate. You might be around my age group here, but I know when I was born in the 70s, seatbelts were not a law. Okay. Car seats for kids were not a law. So my mom was, I imagine, bringing me home in the front seat and she was holding me, no seatbelt on. So we got hit by someone
And
and
it's
I'm
still
flying
60
out.
miles an hour, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So that's the cybersecurity industry. We don't have any preventative controls and there's no law requiring preventative controls. But you look at it just over my lifetime, what's happened with vehicles is seatbelts passed in the mid 80s. Okay. And then car seats, right after that for kids,
Airbags.
airbags, right? Anti-lock brakes, the third brake light, all those things. So do you think an insurance company is going to give you an insurance policy for your car if you don't have seat belts, you don't have airbags, you don't have anti-lock brakes, you don't have the third brake light? Are they going to give it to you? No. So why are insurance companies giving cybersecurity insurance to companies when you don't have MFA, you don't have endpoint protection, you don't have security awareness training, you don't have the basic preventative controls in place?
You're,
And so,
you're sitting
yeah,
in the back of the truck.
yeah,
You know?
exactly. And so when people say that it's inevitable, it drives me crazy when all these cybersecurity vendors say that you're going to get hacked. And I was like, if you don't implement anything to prevent yourself from getting hacked, yeah, you will. But again, I literally have run incident response teams for 20 years and two types of hacks. I put them into two types of categories. Number one, nation state threat actors, they're probably going to get in. Okay. That's just that. If you got a nation state threat actor coming after you, okay, eventually something, okay? Because that's their job all day long. The other one is what I call a drive-by hack. So think about it. If I'm driving down the street and I'm looking at all the houses and I see your house, David, your garage door is up. I can see what kind of car you got, see bikes and all the cool stuff in there. And your side gate is cracked. Okay. When it gets dark, whose house am I going to break into? You are the low-hanging fruit. That's the equivalent of you not doing the basics. If you take the Equifax hack that is pretty well documented, and kudos to the team there for just sharing what actually happened there. But you look at it, IT asset management. If they knew they had the asset internet facing that wasn't patched, that's patch management, so they don't have a good vulnerability management program. And then again, for someone to compromise a system on the DMZ and then pillage all the way to the internal network, that is a very noisy. So if you were monitoring looking for the right things, you would have seen it. Probably not the right multi-factor authentication in place. So all these are basic things that every single company needs to have. But a large company like Equifax didn't even have them in place and covered. So how do you expect an SMB to have those things in place? It's just too hard.
No way. And they're the backbone of the economy. It's really critical for us as a nation to secure the SMBs because they provide critical services, not just to the end users, sometimes to other businesses. And when they go out of business or they're out of use, there are some potentially major impact to quite a large population.
Yeah, you're saying, and it's a challenge that we've run into as a country and as a cybersecurity industry. The large cybersecurity vendors that create the best tools, they don't cater to the SMB because they can't make money off of those small deals. So they're all going to the Fortune 1000 or so. And you take that RSA last year, and I think it was like 4,000 companies there, 4,000 cybersecurity companies there, all trying to sell to the Fortune 1000. Okay. Now you do the math there. That doesn't really add up. There's a lot of competition for a very small amount of companies. Right. And so if I look at it, I'm like, there are like literally thousands and thousands of SMBs and nobody's competing there. And they're the ones that are getting every single day. Literally, you get the stats and we can't really quantify because everything isn't reported. I've heard numbers from 500 hacks a day to 1,000 hacks a day are happening across SMBs. And so that's just fertile ground that needs to be secured. And so at Cyvatar, I feel like we've solved it with removing all the barriers to actually get the basics in place and get them secure.
And even though they have limited resources, most times they're just at high risk because it's a larger enterprise. I always say that we are knowledge-based. The process of manufacturing tires or widgets, so the company perfected over 25 years, over 2 generations. The out there want that. And it's because sometimes they ask themselves, why we got hacked? Because you have something someone else want. We're a knowledge-based economy. They want the way you manufacture. They want the way you serve your customers. They want the way that it's something you perfected. So they are very much a target. And whoever thinks they're not a target is putting their hands in the sun, right? They're going to get hit no matter what.
Let's talk about what targets are, because this is really interesting, just because I've obviously been around a long time. But remember back in the day that websites used to get defaced, right? Yeah, that doesn't happen anymore. Remember back in the day when credit card stuff, so your Target hack and your Home Depot hack? Was the last time a big credit card hack happened? Why has that changed? The reason why it's changed is you've got business email compromise and you have ransom. Okay. It is more lucrative to do those two things as opposed to just face a website or steal somebody's credit card data, right? Because we pretty much figured out how to stop the whole credit. Once somebody steals your credit card, you can go turn it off quickly. And then you have the extra chip in there now. But now they've moved to business email compromise, right? And so it's easy to get somebody to transfer money off of a phishing attack. And so the basics stop all those things. We to figure out a way to understand that every small to medium-sized company is a target. If you have money, then I can ransom you and make money off of it. If you transfer money from one institution from another, which everybody does eventually, that I can intercept those transfers or get it sent to my bank via just looking at your business, understanding, I can look, I say, oh, David does a transfer every Wednesday at 10 a.m. to this bank, to this company. And now I can impersonate that company and say, David, send it to this bank. I just changed. Because the whole thread relationship, you know how to sound like the person on the other end. That takes a few weeks of work. And you can literally just make thousands.
Yeah. And as for ransomware, no one cares about the data as much as you do. And that's what I realize. You can steal someone else's data and try to sell it somewhere else, but nobody cares as much as you do. And the statistics on companies, SMBs recovering from these incidents are dire, to say the least. What are the average, to stay in business 16 months after an incident? What's the numbers? The numbers are not good. If you get hit, most likely, and you don't have a continuity plan in place, you don't have people like yourself and your company on their side, they're shit out of luck.
Yeah. I was going to say the stat I heard was 60% of small and medium-sized companies, either their business will be severely impacted or they may go out of business if they're hit by a major cyber attack.
And just so people realize those numbers, those means that loss of jobs, or the company closes down, their families, this is a real impact. This is not, okay, this 60%. No, they're like, if a company has 200 employees and they go out of business, how many families are getting impacted? All of a sudden they're just out of business and people have to go out and look for other jobs. So that the impact is definitely real, and it's real on the economy. Before we wrap this up, I want to just touch upon one of the other pillars, the compliance component. You are a great believer that compliance is not security, but it should be. There are components associated, and then SMBs and compliance. It's almost like we always thought they don't necessarily have to, or because they can get under the radar, but those things have also changed. If you don't mind just commenting on that.
It's a few things driving it. Number one, I'll say it's the third-party risk. Because think about what you just said, you nailed it. SMBs are dependent on large companies to do business. The small companies, they work as a third party to these large companies. Take Phasico Mechanical, that's how Target got hacked, right? So if Phasico Mechanical actually had a security program and they were locked down and secure, maybe the Target hack didn't happen, right? They had no security requirements as far as I know, and they got compromised, which led to Target being compromised. So what is happening is all these very large companies doing one or two things. Either they're requiring some kind of SOC 2 compliance, or they're going to having them fill out security questionnaires. And so there's large companies that have a third-party risk program, and that's what they focus on. And that's how bees are tied into this mix, and no longer can they dodge the clients. And so now they are also coming back and saying, hey, you need to have literally one of our customers will like, Corey, thank God you guys got us insurance, because I need to close a deal. They asked for $1 million security policy. And because of you guys, we already have it. And we already met the requirements because we had the controls in place. So again, what I've done instead of...
And just pause there for a second, Corey, because it's really, I want to pause, let it sink in. Yes. What you just described, it's a business enabler.
Yes.
It's not just a cost associated with doing business. We always see cybersecurity as a cost associated with doing business. But in this particular case, it was a business enabler. They had all the ducks in a row. They were able to close the business, the transaction quicker, and time is the killer of all transactions.
Yeah, 100%.
Because again, you don't live in a bubble. There may have been somebody else competing on the business, but they were able to show that they have all the ducks in a row, able to close the transaction quicker. and bring in revenue through the door because they have all the ducks in a row. And I wanted just to make that impact because it is very impactful.
And that's the reason why I built this business the way I built it, right? Again, my background, highly technical, but the technical doesn't actually solve the business problem. So people don't realize that cybersecurity it's about the business. You got to figure out what the business drivers are. The business drivers are, you need to have simply the control that you can actually get more business. And the insurance allows you to get more business. The compliance allows you to get more business. So every one of our members gets those three outcomes, period. And so that's how we've designed this. And we've made it easier and faster than anyone else out there, all the way down to e-commerce. So David, you can go to the website and say, I need a vulnerability management program. I got 100 employees. Click buy. We're calling you the next day. We're engaging. We're rolling out a vulnerability management program. So that's an outcome-based approach. We literally are that Netflix of cybersecurity, or whatever you want to call it. Had to make it easy. I've taken my 28 years and made it easy because I don't want to do it the hard way. I've done it before. I don't want to go rack and stack in server rooms and all that. Those days are gone. I'm glad.
I know deep down inside, Corey, you're going on site and racking out those blinking lights.
No, it's cold in the server room. You ever been there? It's cold in the server. I really
I've spent some time there. It's very cold, very noisy, very unpleasant environment to be in. I'll be honest with you. So I don't blame you. But Corey, I love that. And again, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today. And I hope the audience really got something very powerful, very impactful. What is the easiest way for people to reach out to you, to know more about what you do for your customers?
Yeah, go to Cyvatar.AI. You literally can sign up for freemium on our website for free. You get a free CIS gap analysis. You get free cybersecurity policies. You get a free risk treatment dashboard, and you get free external scanning built into that freemium offer. Once you go through and do your gap analysis, you'll figure out where your gaps are and how we can potentially help you lock down and secure a continuous basis, and then get you those other outcomes of compliance and insurance. So that's the easiest way to get me. Hit me up on LinkedIn, Corey D. White on LinkedIn. Both those are two ways to get me.
Love that. Absolutely love that. And there's nothing better than getting a successful security veteran on your side to have you sleep better at night when you're running your business. So I highly recommend for people to reach out to Corey to know more. And thank you for all those who joined today. Thank you very much for listening in, and see you at the next episode. Until then, be safe online as well as offline. I'll see you guys in the next one.